Okay, good morning. We're holding now. Today's daf is daf nun beis. We are going to begin daf nun aleph amid beis. 5 lines from the bottom. In the middle of the line, Toshma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Toshma. Okay, so we're trying to bring different rayas towards a baya of a bia. You have a Kidushin Shem Mesur and Labia, if it's considered a good Kidushin or not. So we brought different rayas, different. So now the Gemara wants to bring another raya to Abaya. Toshma, come on, we're going to bring you a raya from the following Mishnah in Yevamis. The Mishnah says, Mishi Kiddush Achas Mishte Achoyos V'Eni Idea Eze Kiddush. So if let's say you have one who is Mekadosh, one of two sisters, but I'm sorry, this is the next. No, I'm sorry, I did the first Toshma. Okay, Toshma Shtayim Shekitshu Shtei Achoyos. So you have two men, and these two men are not related to each other, and they were Mekadosh, two sisters. So you have, let's say, you have, for example, Reuven and Yosef. He brings a picture over here. You have, let's say, Reuven and Yosef. Reuven and Yosef, they're not related. So they're Mekadosh, two sisters, but they don't know. Rusai Reuven and Yosef doesn't know if they're Mekadosh to Leah or Mekadosh to Rachel. So that's the verse. You have two unrelated men who was Mekadosh, two sisters. Where this one doesn't know which sister he was Mekadosh, and this one doesn't know which sister he was Mekadosh. So what's the din? So this one gives a get to each of the women, to each of the sisters, and this one gives a get Kidushin. Now, l'chayda, their Kidushin is not Kidushin she-nimsru l'bia, because they're two sisters. So the question is, when you have shtei achoyah, you have two people that are not related, but there's and they mekadosh to two sisters. So why does each one have to give a get? L'chayda garnish, because you're mekadosh two sisters. So the Gemara answers and says, Hachanami here in this case also, Kishehu Krula B'Seif Nisarvu. Here we're talking about that they were identified. In other words, they knew about it, but they forgot it, and then B'Seif Nisarvu, then they were intermingled. So the actual Kedushin, there was the Chalaisa Kedushin, and then afterwards it got messed up. They forgot it. So the Gemara says, Dekanami. The Mishnah is also precise. Diktani, what does it say? We had this yesterday. Eini Yodea. It says that what is afraid does not know. That, in other words, at one point he did know, but now they don't know. But like Diktani Eini Yodea, it doesn't say it's not known. Shema Mina. From here you could bring a raya that indeed we're dealing with a case where the sisters were identified and then later it was Mu'urif. So for the Gemara, if that's Takib Pshat in the Braisa, so now, again, the same question is, Ma'i Lememro. So what's the Chiddush? Obviously, if it's Yodua, it's Yodea, then obviously you need to get from both of them. Both sisters are going to require a get from each man. So the Gemara, or I should say, each guy is going to need to give a get to each sister. So the Gemara says, Seifa Itzrachilei. It was necessary to teach the latter clause of that Mishnah. The what? Mace. If each man died before he was divorced. And this one had a brother, and this one had a brother. So then this brother performs chalitza with both of them. The other brother, and the brother performs chalitza with both of them. In other words, neither person can make yibum, because maybe he's going to do yibum with the sister of his yivama. So now, just to be clear, let's say Yosef and Reuven were two brothers. Sorry, Yosef and Reuven were each had a brother. Yosef had Binyamin, Reuven had Shimon. Yosef and Rachel now were Mekadosh, the two sisters, but don't know which sisters they were Mekadosh. So what's the din? Each one has to give a get. Now what happened over here? Reuven and Yosef now both died. Reuven has a brother Shimon, and Yosef has a brother Binyamin. So the din is that Shimon has to do chalitza with Leah and Rachel. Why? Because he doesn't know which one is the proper almana. He doesn't know. He says, he can again, right? Yeah, I don't know. Do I have to do yibum or not? You do yibum. So you do chalitza with both, and also Binyamin has to do chalitza with both of them. Yeah. Simple case. Okay, so now the Gemara says over here. Now, if one had one brother and the other had two brothers. That's this case over here. Ha'echad chelis shneim. So one performs chalitza with both of them. V'hashnayim and one of the two and the two brothers echad chelis echad miyabim. One performs chalitza of one of the sisters, and if he wants, he could also do yibum as well with the other sister.
What does God do with two brothers?
So you have like this. You have the same story. You have Yosef and Reuven, and they each were Mekadesh. They're not sure if it was Leah or Rachel. Now, Reuven and Yosef now died. Reuven had one brother, Shimon, and Reuven and Yosef died. Yeah, Reuven had a brother, Shimon, and Yosef had a brother, Asher and Binyamin.
Okay.
So now, Shimon is going to need to make a chalitza with Rachel and with Leah.
Right.
Then,
but he doesn't know which one.
Because he doesn't know which one. Then Binyamin does chalitza with Leah, and now once he does chalitza with Leah, then he doesn't have to do. Then he's not a zika with Rachel.
Wait a minute. But you've not said a Kidushin, so then the other one you're not sure which one. So the other one is making Kidushin Stam. But shot.
No, what's up? So Rachel is still a suffix.
I think the oldest brother does chalitza.
So let's
the two brothers.
Let's read it and then I'll explain. Okay. So like this. So now ha'echad chelis shneim. One performs chalitza with both of them. V'ashnayim and the two brothers. Echad chelis ve'echad miyabim. One performs chalitza with one of the sisters, and one, if he wants, he could do yibum. Now im kadmu v'kansu. If they married the almana before going to Beis Din, so then the Beis Din doesn't force them to get divorced. So the Gemara explains what's the chiddush over here. Dafka michletz v'hadar yabumi. This is effective specifically if one of the two brothers first performs chalitza and then afterwards performs yibum. Aval yabumi v'hadar michletz. But if one of the two brothers first performs yibum and then he does chalitza, it does not take effect. Why? Because the paga b'yivama l'shuk, it's possibly, as he's possibly encountering a yivama getting married to a person, member, like a son of the public. Because it's possible that the woman he married was not his yivama, but someone else's yivama, so until the other man performs chalitza with her, it's still usher for her to marry other men. So
why is it called Yibum? What's like Yibum? It's called because once you got the other one off the hook, so it's not two sisters anymore. So you could marry one of them.
So let me try to understand this. You have
not Yibum. You're talking about you have two brothers. The chiv licked of let's say Asher on the oldest brother.
So till here this is clear, right?
Yeah.
Reuben had a brother. Yosef had two brothers. Okay.
I don't have the two brother situation. The oldest one is the one with the...
Yosef has two brothers, Asher and Binyamin. Reuven has one brother, Shimon. So now the shaila is, who could Shimon? What this could be?
Just understandable. One brother.
So he does chalitza with both of them.
Yeah, I'll let him out. What's the second one? Asher is the older one. Asher is the one who had to perform chalitza or yibum. So he divorces one. He gives chalitza to one, and now what?
So what's that? So this is clear. I'm just trying to understand myself. This is clear now with Biyam. This is clear. Reuben and Shimon to do chalitza with both. Now, Binyamin has to do chalitza with Leah.
In order for this one to be able to marry this one, the one has to be clear. That shouldn't be.
So we're worried that the brother Binyamin, right? This could be his sister-in-law, which they had no kids. So now Binyamin has to get rid of Leah. Okay, so now Asher and Rachel are not a zika anymore.
Right.
But because Rachel's still a suffix, maybe she is really the almana of Yosef. Maybe.
Okay.
She's married the almana. Okay. So therefore, Binyamin needs to. Maybe she's the almana of Yosef, and now she becomes the skuka Binyamin and Asher. So since Rachel is not achay skuka, So therefore,
because the mother's divorced already when he gave chalitza, so you know how to do.
So therefore, you could do yibum with her. Yeah, so say. Okay, fine. Toshma. Okay, Toshma. Now come bring another right. The Tani Tivyomi taught the following brisa. If this man had 5 sons and that man had 5 daughters, so Reuben had 5 sons, Shimon had 5 daughters. V'Amar, and Reuben says, Achas mibnei secha mikudeshes le'achas mibnei. One of your daughters is mikudeshes to one of my sons. So what's the din? But he didn't specify which one. So Reuben has 5 sons, but he says one of your daughters is mikudeshes to my sons, but doesn't say which one. So what's the din? Called achas v'achas tricha chamisha get. So the halacha is that each and every one of the daughters requires 5 gittin, 1 from each son, because it's a suffix if he was. So each son has to give. Each son has to give a get to each girl. Now,
You have 5 sons, so you need 25. Each one you don't know which one.
Right.
One.
So I think that's the word, right? Each one needs to have 5.
Each one needs 5.
5, yeah.
There's 25 gittin.
Yeah, each daughter needs to have 5 gittin. Good business. Okay, so kol achas v'achas tzricha chamisha gittin. Each one needs 5 gittin. Meis echa mehem. Now, if one of the sons dies before giving the get, so kol achas v'achas. So now one of the sons dies. So kol achas v'achas tzricha arba gittin. Each and every one of the daughters requires 4 gittin from the surviving brothers. Chalitza mecha mehem, chalitza from one of them, in case she was mikudeshes to the brother who died. Now, the chalitza of one of the brothers is enough to basically release her from the yibum of the other brothers. Now,
that way? The older one is.
but according to Rava, this Kidushin, l'cheda, you just said Kidushin shalein memser l'bia is like shmei Kidushin, but l'cheda. So why do they need to have a get? Now, v'chi tema achanami kishuk shel b'seif nisar. We're going to give the same answer we keep giving that they were identified and later they're intermingled. That can't be. Why? Because achas mibnei secha le'ech mibanek tani. What does it say? One of your daughters to one of my sons, which is mashma.
It's all murder.
Yeah, it's mashma that the Kidushin can never have been given for bia because, and yet we see
identified who what when?
Exactly, and nevertheless we say it's a valid Kiddushin. So the Gemara here finally brings and says, you know what, Tiyufta derava Tiyufta. This is taka even, and here is one of the famous dinim of Bial Kagam. Vilchos say the Abaya Bial Kagam. So we know usually the halacha is right. So usually the halacha is always like my son asked me the other day, the Rav and Abaya, who's the halacha like? Whatever. So Ashkocha brothers. Rav and Abaya, usually the halacha is always like Abaya, except for Bial Kagam. Now, what does Bial Kagam stand for? The Yud stands for Yir Shlei Midas. The Ayin is Edim Zemimim. The Lamed is Alechi Ha'imim Me'elov. The Kuf is our case of Kidushin Shlei Nibsir Lebiyah. And the Gimel is Giloi Daita Begita. And the Mem is Mumar Eichel Nevelas Lahachis. So in all these dinim, the halacha in Bial Kagam always goes like Bial Kagam, exactly. So this is one of the dinim. Kidushin Shalei Mem Selabiyah is according to Abaya Shmei Kidushin, and therefore, like in our machlekes, in our sugya, the halacha is going to be. This is one of the 6 places the halacha is like
that's a chal.
That it's chal, yeah. Rabbi, we don't pass on it. Okay, the Mishnah said, Maisa b'chamish nashon. There was a Maisa involving 5 women, and what happened? The Mishnah said, amongst them there were 2 sisters. One of the men gathered a basket of figs that were from the field, and the fruit was shvis, and he said that you're mekudeshes to me with this basket, and one of them accepted on behalf of all the ladies. So what do the Chacham say? That the sisters are not mekudeshes. That's the Ma'aseh b'chamish nashon. So Amar Rav says, Shema minam mastis arba. We can learn 4 halachas from this Mishnah. B'nokat Rav bidei tlas, and Rav held 3 of them in his hand. In other words, he knew what they were, but he was uncertain about the 4th. Now, what do you see from our Mishnah? Shema minam, you can learn from our Mishnah number 1. Hamekadish v'peidah shvis. One who's mekadish, a woman with produce of shvis, mekudeshes. Because what happened over here? He was mekadish with Peir Shvi. So we see that even though
it's hefker, but he was
correct,
he got it.
Exactly. You don't say that and it's the Kiddush is even more so. You don't say that the produce, the hefker thing, could only be used for eating and not for other purposes. So that's the word. The Mekadosh Peirush Shvis is number one is Mikudeshes. Number two, Shmamina, you can learn from here that Kisha Begazel Einim Mikudeshes, that a person is Mekadosh a woman with stolen items. And Afilu Begazel Didei, even if it was even if it was her stolen items, she's not going to be Mikudeshes. So we have three things. Number one is a Mekadosh Peirush Shvis is Mikudeshes, like we see in our case. Number two is Kisha Begazel. If you take stolen, even if it's her stolen stuff, and she's Mevatel, it doesn't work. Okay, we didn't do the third thing yet. Now the Gemara says Mimai. From where do you know these two halachas? So he says Midiktani. Midiktani Shalahem Hoisa V'Shal Shvis Hoisa. Now what does it say? It says, what does it say? The lashon is, what does it say? It says that the produce was their fields, Shilahem Haisa, it was in their fields, and it was Shashvis Haisa. Now, what do we see from our Mishnah? Time it is Shvis. The reason why the Kiddushin of the produce is called because it was Peir Shvis. The Hefker, which was Hefker. Ha, the Shar Shnei Shavua. But if it would be of other years not in the Shvis year, the Kiddushin would not take effect. Was stolen properly, even if she accepted it for Kiddushin. What's the deal of the Mishnah? The Mishnah said that it was Dafke Peir, it was Peir Shvis. So I see what's the reason why Peir Shvis works? Because it's Hefker. Mashma that if it would be the other years, if it would be, let's say, hers, it wouldn't work. And also you can learn from here, Shema Mina, Isha Nasa Shtilcha. So you basically see from here that stolen things won't work. Why? The only reason why it work is because Hefker. Mashma, if it wouldn't be Hefker, even if it would be hers, even if she Kiviyachol is accepts it, we say it doesn't take effect. So we see that from Geneva it doesn't work. Now, Ushma Mina, you can learn from here that Isha Nasa Shliach Lechaverta. A woman can become a Shliach to accept Kiddushin for another woman. And the Chiddush is
for the gang.
Right, the one girl accepted for all five. Two of them doesn't work because the Achayis don't work, but the other three does work. So I see that a woman could accept for another woman, and the Chiddush is V'afilu b'malkim shenasas la tzara. Even in a situation where by her accepting it, they become now rival wives, it nevertheless works. Now, so that's three. V'idach mahi, and what is the fourth mentioned by Rav? So we said three, no? We said Mekadosh Peirush Shvis, we said Gazel, and we said that Isha Nasa Shliach. But he said a fourth one, but he didn't know which one. So the Gemara says V'idach, and what about the fourth mentioned by Rav? So he says this is the halacha of which we were speaking about Kiddushin She'ein Misur in the Bia. This is the Kiddushin which is not given for Bia. And why doesn't Rav Taka count this in the halacha of 4? That we can learn from our Mishnah that Kiddushin She'ein Misur in the Bia is Shmei Kiddushin. So the Gemara says Mishum the Masapeli Kabayi Kedav, because Rav was uncertain whether the correct as halacha is like Abaya, who maintains that Kiddushin is valid as we just said, or whether the correct interpretation is in the Mishnah according to the explanation of Rava, which the Kiddushin would not work. Okay. So the Gemara says, "Kisol Rabbi Zera Amra Lo Shmaito Kamed Rabbi Yechon." When Rabbi Zera ascended to Eretz Yisrael, when he went up to Eretz Yisrael, he stated this halacha before Rabbi Yechon. Amar Lei. So he said, Rabbi Yechon said to him, "Yomer Rav Hachi Rav Taka say Pshat Zeh." He said these halachas. So the Gemara says, now it's mashmo that the fact that Rabbi Yechon said this, he's disagreeing with Rav. That you can learn these halachas from the Mishnah, which the question is, Omar, but didn't he himself say so? Rabbi Yechon says, in the case of if one robbed another of an item and its owner did not be miyayish, so that's the shnei menichem lahaktish. So the halacha is, if one robbed another person and the owner that was not miyayish, he did not despair from the recovering. So the din is neither of them can be makdish to stone. The ganish one now. Why the fee is that the fee shaloi? The robber cannot be makdish because it's not his. And the owner cannot be makdish because it's not in his possession. It's not tangible in his possession. So by the same logic, one should not be able to be mekadosh a woman with stolen property as it's not his. So what's Rabbi Yochanan saying? Mi Omar Rav Achi. You yourself saying it doesn't say clearly. He says it about Gozul V'Nisai Shua Bailim. Now, what's the svara? Because he says that the why can he not be makdash because it's stolen property? So if you can't be makdash to the Beis Hamikdash, so the pashtus Kidushin shouldn't work. So what's he saying? Mi Omar Achi. So the Gemara says, Hachi Kamerli. The Gemara answers that Rabbi Yochanan, he wasn't objecting to Rav's opinion. Rather, he was saying, Mi Omar Kavasi. Did Rav actually say in accordance to my opinion? That's what he was saying. There's a halta zevimir. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Meisvei, they asked a shaila against Rav's opinion that one cannot be mekadosh a woman with stolen property. Kitcha begozel bechomas begeneva. If a person was mekadosh her with an item in robbery, or let's say chomas is a forced transaction, he paid, but he forced them to sell it, begeneva, or theft, or if he grabbed the seller from her hand and was mekadosh her with it. So what's the din? Mekudesha, she's mekudesha. So what do we see from here? That a person can be mekadosh a woman, clearly the Tosefta says, with stolen property. So the Gemara says no. Hasam begozel didar. There is referring to her stolen property. Now, by accepting it from him as Kidushin, it basically indicates that she's she's releasing him from returning it. Gemara says, one second. From the fact that the Brisa says, or he grabbed a seller of hers, and it must be that the first case of the Mishnah is talking about property stolen from others. So the Gemara says, no, they're two separate. They're not two separate cases, but rather the Tana is Pirushik. He's explaining his earlier statement. What is the case that he was mekadosh with either robbery or forced transaction or theft? How is it so? He grabbed the seller from her and was mekadosh her. Oh, so one second. So that's the shot. That Pushim first like kitchen because becomes a gneva case that he can chakatu sell him the kitchen.
I state that he took it from her, the coin, the seller. So
before that, so the Brisa, even the Reisha is talking about her stolen thing, not other things. Now, v'ha masnisen, but doesn't the Mishnah l'cheda the gozol dida? Isn't the Mishnah dealing with a case where the stolen item is hers? And what does Rav say? V'kamar Rav any mekudeshes. So l'cheda we see clearly that she's not mekudeshes. It says leikash. It's not a shayla. Ha the shadich ha the leishayich. The Bryce is referring to a case where he had arranged to be mekadosh beforehand, which is masham, which indicates that she basically released him from his obligation to return it. And the case in the Mishnah is referring to a case where he had not arranged his marriage with her. So basically, it's stolen property. And stolen property is not mekudeshes. So now the Gemara brings a few stories. There was a certain woman who was washing her feet in a vessel of water. Also, a certain man came. He grabbed a few dinners from another person and he threw them to her. And Amrullah said, "Mikadasht li, you are mikudeshes to me." Also, that this man came before Rava to ask, "What's the status? Is she mikudeshes or not?" Amar, so Rava said, "Les techosh lahad Reb Shimon." There's not anyone who's concerned. In other words, you don't have to be concerned with the opinion of Reb Shimon. The Amar who said, "Stam gzela," an ordinary case of robbery, yush bailam havra. So, an ordinary case of robbery, the owner was miyayish of recovering the stolen object, and it belongs to the robber. Now, so we don't say that. The chazak is that the balabos was not miyayish from recovering the stolen items. In that case, since the stolen dinners did not belong to the man, it belonged. So Reb Shimon holds stam gzela. Stam when somebody steals, yush bailam habed. So the balabas is being miyayish.
So therefore, it's good kedushin.
It's good kedushin. Here he says, Rava says, we don't be chayish to less the choshla Reb Shimon. We don't care. We don't chayish Reb Shimon. And therefore, since we say that the man who you stole the money from was not miyayish. So the kedushin is not a kedushin. Second story, Ahu Aris the Kodesh b'Moizah the Shamchi. There was a certain sharecropper who was mekadosh a woman with the shamchot, like a handful of onions. The moizah the shamchot, it's like a handful of onions taken from the field. So he was a sharecropper, and he took from the field which he worked, he took a handful of onions. Now, and he was mekadosh a woman with that. Aslak made it up. He came before Rav to ask, what's the status of the woman? So Amar Lei, Rav said to him, my acholach. Who relinquished these onions to you? Since the owner did not allow you to take them, so you stole the items. So if you stole items, the woman is not mukudeshes. So the Gemara says, "V'hani mili b'meiza." This applies to like a handful. Aval kisha, but if you took a bundle of onions and it was mekadosh for the woman, matzi amarla, the sharecropper can say to the owner, "Anash kali kisha." I took a bundle. Shakal at kisha. You took a bundle. Kisha ki kisha. One bundle for another bundle. Since in any case, how does he work? How does he get paid? They divide the crop between them. So they divide. When you take a handful of stuff, that wasn't the arrangement.
It's a get it from a sachs
or b'chlal, right? That's
part
of his payment is that he gets paid with the kisha.
You could use whatever you need.
Or that's how they divide the crop between them. He doesn't get paid, but whatever he makes, they go half. Yeah. Okay, now the Gemara says a third story. There was a certain brewer who was making date beer for someone who was mekadosh a woman with sediments from the beer. So this brewer, he was making date beer for someone, and he was mekadosh a woman with sediments from the beer. So the owner of the beer came and found him. So the owner said to him, why didn't you give the Kidushin from the sharp sediments, from the better quality ones? So also the Kamei Rava. So the brewer came before Rava. In other words, if the owner's comments is mashma that he basically relinquishes his rights to the sediments, which would mean that the woman is mekudeshes. So Amar Rava said to him, Lo amru klach etzel yofis. The Chachamim said that if the owner discovers that someone had taken something of this without permission, it says, go and take the item of better quality. So basically this is a siman that he agrees to the man's actions, but in truma, only with regards to truma. And basically, since there's no truma over here, you don't have the rights to use the sediments.
In other words,
so what's the case? Basically, Rava told him the only time that when the owner says, why don't you take the better ones or whatever, is by truma. Now, what's the case? He says, the Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Ketzad Amro. So it's taught in a brisa, this is the Sefton Trumas. When do they say that when do they say that where a person separates truma without the owner's consent, his truma is considered truma? So the brisa clarifies. In the case where there was someone who entered another's field and gathered produce from it. So the guy went into somebody else's field, he took produce, shalei b'rshus. So im cheishish mishum gazel. So what happened? He went into the person's field. He gathered produce and he separated truma without the owner's permission. If the owner is concerned about his actions and views it as robbery, truma is not truma. But if not, then the halacha is truma. So truma is truma. The Raisa continues, and from where would we know whether you should be concerned that the owner looks at it as robbery or not? Now, if the owner came and found him separating truma, and he said, Klach etzel yafis, go and take the produce of better quality and separate truma from it. And if the produce is better quality, then the produce he has separated is found to the masa truma is considered truma.
In other words, if there's better quality, so the ones that he gave already is truma.
Right. Why? Because the owner is assumed
because it's not kedeta. He's happy.
He's happy that he separated truma. Yeah, that he spared him that he did the job for him. But if not, then ain't truma truma.
No, but there's no better one. So it's tam gesagt, but he's upset that he was
like sarcastic. He says, "Oh, like
ain't truma."
Now, then the brisa says, "Hayu habaylim melakim mesifin." If the owners were gathering and adding to the truma that he had separated, benkach or benkach. So if the owners were gathering and adding to the truma, which was mashma that they agreed to his action, they're helping him.
It has nothing to do with better or not. You took, he had given him.
Right.
Yeah.
So then truma. Now Rava now says that this halacha applies to truma, which is a mitzvah that the owner has to perform in any case. But over here, ksufa hudav, here in the case of the brewer who's mekadesh a woman with sediments of the beer, the owner's acts, mishum ksufa hudav, the owner acts because of embarrassment. He doesn't feel comfortable protesting.
Right.
But he doesn't feel comfortable being meicha, but
Kisufa is type for
embarrassing. The owner acts because of embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't feel comfortable to make a protest.
In other words, he's
But
kind of red-handed.
Correct, but he doesn't want to. But he's not relinquishing his rights to the actual sediments. So therefore, any mekadesh, it's not mekadesh. Okay, zog the Mishnah, mekadesh bechalka, a person who's mekadesh, a woman with his portion of a korban. Let's say we're talking about a kohen, right? The kohen who takes ma'aser karbonis. Torah gave certain halakim to the kohen, right? Which we're learning about this now. We just had this in the Rambam, Hilchos ma'aser karbonis. Right. So the Torah, let's say, the Torah gave certain halakim to the kohen. So what happened? A kohen who was mekadesh a woman with his portion of the korban. Whether he does so with kachik kadoshim or kachim kalim. She's not mekudeshes. Why? Because kachim are not memayne adam, but rather memayne gevaya. They belong to the Eibishter that gave rishus for the kohen to eat it. So what happens? Comes out that the woman was never mekabel Kidushin. Now, what happens if?
Wait a minute. What exactly? The kohen took it from where? The kohen is mekadosh.
So Rashi says shecholak im ochav hakenim. He took.
In other words, before it was given to him, obviously, because it was given to them, sis. So Gavoya is was.
It belongs to Hashem.
No. But what happened here exactly? He took it between his brothers before it was divided for this particular kohen. Before it was divided for the kohen.
Doesn't say that.
Because once it belongs to the kohen has no right to. The kohen has no right over it. That would be once it's given to him. In other words, we're talking about Kabbalas, we're talking about Ma'aser, what are we talking about here?
Kabbalas.
So Kabbalas, B'chalal, he has to eat, the kohen has to eat.
Right, so let's say, no right let's take Kachik Kadoshim. So you have, let's say, it's a Chatas, the Oshan, the Mincha Shamit Tzibur.
So the kohen has to eat it. The kohen has no right to give it further to anybody.
Correct.
Anybody else.
And they have to be eaten in the Azara.
In the
Azara.
In other words, Tumas and Ma'aser, that belongs to the...
Right. The Karbon is, the Teda, it's the Eibishter, and the Eibishter says you have to eat in the Azara.
But it's in Yonan.
Okay, so now, so Nachamah. When it comes to Ma'aser Sheni, b'mesheg, whether he does it b'sheg, b'mezid, like Kiddush, he's not Mekadesher. David Ameir, these are the words that Ameir Rabbi says no. B'shegig, only if it's b'shegig, then like Kiddush. The Kiddush doesn't work. B'mezid, but if he does so intentionally, then Kiddush does work. Now, with regards to a person who's Mekadesh a woman with hektish, property belonging to the Beis HaMikdash, b'mezid, if he does so intentionally, then Kiddush to Kiddushin is a Kiddushin. Or b'shegig, if he does so, b'shegig like Kiddush, David Ameir, b'shegig Kiddush, b'mezid like Kiddush. So now the Gemara says, Neima Masnisa and the Loik Rabbi S Greenwald. Shall we say that the Mishnah is not according to the opinion of Rabbi S Greenwald? Why? What did Rabbi S Greenwald say? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Pasuk is speaking about the obligation to bring a korban for taking a Shavuos Shav. Right, it's talking about Shavuos HaPikodon. So the Torah says, Nefesh kisechto mola mal ba'Hashem v'chichesh ba'misa b'pikodon b'sumas b'gozel v'hoya ki yechta v'osham. The Torah is telling us that a person demanded money from his friend, that he's chayav, and he lied, and he denied that he owes the money. If afterwards he admits that he lied, so he has to pay back, plus he has to add a chomish to the tzviyah. And he has to bring also a korban osham. Now, this shvu is called Shavuos HaPikodon. So umola mal ba'Hashem. So So that means that's referring to that he denies it. So again, talking about a person who's obligated to bring a shuas apikadan, that he a carbon for shuas apikadan. Now, so what does the Torah say? Umala mal b'Hashem, and he commits a me'ilah against Hashem, and he swore falsely. So the pasuk is discussing property belonging to another, and what does the Torah say? The Torah says Umala mal b'Hashem. The rabbis kachim kalim shehein mimeni. This comes to include the obligation of a carbon with regards to possession of kachim kalim, where the property, where are they shehein mimeni, where they're his mimeni. Do Rabbi S Greenwald. Now, so what do we see from here? According to Rabbi S Greenwald, the portion of the kachim kalim that the kohen receives belong to him. Right? The rabbis kashim kalim shem meinay. So we see that according to Rabbi S Greenwald, l'chayda, it's his. And then what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said clearly mekadosh b'chelkei ben mekadosh kedashim ben mekadosh kedashim and mekadosh. Why? Because it's gavaya. It's not the ape. It's not his. Gemara says no. I feel the time Rabbi S Greenwald. You could even say Rabbi S Greenwald. Come Rabbi S Greenwald. Why did Rabbi S Greenwald say this for that it's his is mechayim when the animal's still alive? But after it was shechted, it does not belong to the kohen who receives portion from it. My time because when the kohen receives the portion after the animal has been shechted, they receive their portion from the eibishter, and it does not own the portion itself. Tekenami, it could also be medayik. Tiktani, what does the Mishnah say? Mekadosh bechelkoi, a person who's mekadosh a woman with his portion of the karbanis, ben kachik kedosh and ben kachik kedal, like kiddush. The Mishnah does not speak of a kohen who's mekadosh a woman with a living carbon. Right. It says with his portion. That she's not mekudeshes. Okay. Tanah we learned in a brayso lachar ptiras shel meir omer lahem Rabbi Yehuda l'talmidav. After Meir passed to Rabbi Yehuda said to his talmidim, al yikon so talmidei Rabbi Meir lekan, do not let Rabbi Meir's students enter in base medrash. Bnei shekantaronim him. Because they're like the English word is vexatious. They argue just for the sake of arguing, but don't have real rise to what they're saying. Just time to be right, like argumentative. Yeah, like you have vexatious. You have people in court, like the Islam lawyers just throw things, but just to delay the process, but don't really have anything to back them up. Now, so he says like this. First of all, they're vexatious. And they don't come to learn Torah, but rather they come to overwhelm me with halachas. Sumchas, who was a Talmud of Rameir, pushed and entered anyway. Huh? So he pushed him and he said, this is what Rameir taught me. That a person is mekadosh a woman with his portion, whether he did so with his carbon, this doesn't matter. It's not mekudeshes. Because the Meir there, Rabbi Yehuda got angry on the students. Did I not say to you, I'll come to the Meir lekam neishe kantorim him, v'limutedem boim el kapchani b'hil halachas him boim. So Rabbi Yehuda explained his why was he so what was he so upset about the statement of Meir? Because the halacha is not relevant. Why? Because from where would a woman come to the azara? Women are not allowed to come into the azara where the kohenim eat their karbanis of kachim kedoshim or kachim kalim. Oh, so that's another problem. How b'chlal his chelek, and we just said before, not shaykh to happen. So Rabbi Yosef said, who was present, said Yemru, they will say Meir shachav. Meir passed away. Yehuda grew angry. And Yeshi Sasak and Yeshi remained silent. So he says, Teda Ma'atehela, what's going to be Mateda? And he says that the fact is the halacha is relevant. But isn't it common for a man to accept Kidushin for his daughter in the Hazar? There's no need to give Kidushin item directly to the woman. It can be given to her father. And can a woman not designate a shliach for herself to accept kiddushin in the courtyard? And furthermore, what would the halacha be if a woman taka pushed and entered? Since it's possible for her to do so, the halacha is still relevant. Okay. Tanya was taught in a brayso that the Chacham discussed the issue of a kohen who was mekadosh a woman with his chelek. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda says mekudeshes. Rabbi Yosef mekudeshes. Rabbi Yochanan says shnei mikra echad darshu. that both of them learn from the same pasuk, which says that the Kohen has the right to a portion of the korban of Kach Kedoshim. This shall be yours of the most holy things from the fire. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Lecha. Rabbi Yehuda holds yours, indicating that the it's for you and the Chol Tzedakah, all your needs, like you were saying. Rabbi Yossi says no. Keish has to be like fire. Ma'ish lachila. Just like as the portion of fire. What does fire do? It consumes. So too, the Kohen's portion is consumed only for fire, but not for other purposes.